Be the Good with Kate shows each of us how it is possible to find and follow our passions at any age. But not only that, we can do this while making the world a better place along the way. I'm Kate Chericello, and I'm on a mission to shine a light on the positive news all around us. I hope Be the Good with Kate inspires you to live your purpose and go out and be the good in the world. Join me each week as I have the honor of sharing these stories with you. Subscribe here where you are listening today, or go to katechericello.com/bethegood to be updated when new episodes are released. I get so excited about sharing each and every episode of Be the Good with you, and I hope you enjoy these people and stories. If you're new here, welcome. And if you are returning, thanks so much for your support. I am so glad you found Be the Good with Kate and would love to hear from you. If you are finding value in these episodes, I invite you to share with someone who could also use this dose of inspiration, or tag me on social at positively_Kate with your favorite quote from the episode. Every share, subscriber, review, and comment helps me to share these guests' wonderful work to more people. Thank you for your support. Now on to this week's episode. Let's spread a little more goodness in the world. Welcome back to Be the Good with Kate. I'm so happy to introduce you to Gretchen Holmes. She is a 3-time cancer survivor, a PhD, and host of the Work in Between podcast, where she and her guests take a deep dive into the struggles, joys, and daily actions that move us toward physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And many of my listeners know I am also in the fitness world, and so I'm always talking about that whole health, right? It goes beyond physical. There's the mental, the emotional. So I already know that I love what Gretchen is doing here, but she was diagnosed with diabetes in 2021 and transformed her life by losing 110 pounds, and continues to focus on the daily work necessary to maintain a vibrant, healthy lifestyle. And if that all weren't enough, previously, Gretchen was a stand-up comedian and continues to use humor to navigate the complexities of life. She was also co-creator, co-producer, writer, and on-air talent for WUMR. That is the Let's Talk Health show at that radio station, and was named as one of 100 successful women to know on the Gulf Coast in 2022 by Gulf Coast Women magazine. Gretchen, thank you for that tongue twister, and also thank you for being here today.
Thank you. After saying all that, I can see why I'm tired. I mean, my goodness. I'm so excited to be here. I really am.
But seriously, something that's just so fascinating to me too is that you connect with people, whether it's in person or online, and with guests, I know a certain amount of their background, and then I go into their actual bio, and there's so many more layers, and this I know only scratches the surface. So please tell us more about who you are.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I think anytime we can focus on the positive, it's really important. And part of what I try to do is help inspire people, give them hope that they too can navigate some pretty difficult things. So I am a 3-time cancer survivor. I was diagnosed the first time when I was an undergraduate at NYU. And I had found a tumor, and I went into student health, and they told me to eat more salt. And I thought, I don't think that's it. So I went to another physician that they had recommended, and she did an ultrasound, and she said, yep, there's a tumor, but I don't think you're sick. It's my job to determine if you're sick, and you're not sick. And I said, well, I can't swallow. I had just lost almost 100 pounds at that time, and I had kept it off, was very healthy, and I had started gaining it back at an alarming rate. And I was sleeping all the time. And I said, no, something's wrong. So I went to a third health provider. They biopsied, and it was thyroid cancer. I had the initial surgery. They determined it was cancer. So I went and had the other half of my thyroid taken out. So now I had no thyroid. But at the time, I didn't get the standard radioactive iodine treatment. All sorts of reasons why not, but nobody would give me a directive on, no, you really should do this. They kind of left it up to me, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I said, no, we'll just hang on. Well, unfortunately, we didn't do the treatment, and I had left New York. It was 1998, went to start my PhD in Lexington, Kentucky, and I had no symptoms. I was I was getting blood work done every 6 months. Everything looked great. But I woke up one morning and in a voice in my head said, you need to go to the doctor. And I thought, why? I feel fine. And but I thought, okay, my older brother had passed a few years earlier. And I thought, well, maybe Chris is telling me I need to get to the doctor. So, okay. So I called the health center, the medical center, and they had one thyroid cancer doctor. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. But it turned out to be that he was one of the top thyroid cancer docs in the country. So I go see him. They do all the testing, and I had cancer again, and it had metastasized to my lungs. So now I was stage 4. So I had no symptoms at all. And so over the course of the next few years, they treated me very extensively. And after about 3 years, I was cancer free and was thrilled, obviously graduated, went on with my life. And when I moved to Miami for work, I was married. We went down there for a job. As many women in their mid-50s, should have been all done with menopause, but I was not. And there was a lot of heavy bleeding. And it was always attributed to my weight, always. And so nobody would do anything. They never took it any further to see if anything else was going on. And that went on for 3 or 4 years until I found myself in the emergency room because I was basically bleeding out at work. And so finally I got put on some medication. They did a biopsy, nothing came to light. And then they put me on meds. Everything was fine until it wasn't. And then the pandemic hit, and we had moved down here to the Gulf Coast. And I happened to get a physician who was listening to me and did not attribute everything to my weight. And come to find out, I had a significant endometrial cancer or endometrial tumor. And so I went in and I had a radical hysterectomy. And I was lucky because it didn't metastasize anywhere. But I don't know what would have happened if we had treated it early. So I finally learned how to advocate for myself and not let people be so dismissive and attribute everything to my weight. So that was my third bout of cancer free. But my oncologist asked me at that time, who did the surgery, we got to talk about you being a cancer survivor. What kind of life do you want to lead? Because your weight is too high, and I'm really worried about it. And most people who get through these types of cancers don't die from the cancer. They die from heart disease and diabetes and all those things. And I thought, well, that's a really good question. So I started to ponder. And then the following February was diagnosed with diabetes. And that scared me more than the cancer did, because I'd been watching my baby brother fight diabetes for 10 years, and he'd already been on dialysis. He had already lost a leg. And I thought, that's my future. Now, what are you going to do? And then I made a decision. So I joined Weight Watchers that night. That happened to be my choice. 3 months later, my brother passed away from COVID, actually. And I thought, even more so, I need to make this transformation. And ultimately, I lost 110 pounds. I started doing all the internal work that I needed to do. And I started a podcast because I thought, if I didn't know how to do all this stuff, clearly there's other people who don't know either. And I thought, let's start exploring all the questions that I have. And that's how the work in between came about. And so that's pretty much where I am now. That's true.
Oh, wow. Lots to dive into here. And
Yeah.
just incredible. I mean, you had a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and to get through that, like that one piece alone is practically unheard of, it feels like. And then everything else, and then 3 times with cancer, and your health and everything that you've accomplished with that is incredible. And something I really appreciate you saying was, I did the work that was internal, the internal work.
Mhm.
What, I mean, you had the external factors around you that I'm hearing was really affecting you, but can you describe what it was internally that you were, I don't know if what you were feeling is the right way to ask it, but maybe what was that aha moment on the inside? Because we know what it was externally.
Yeah, for me, what I had to figure out was why I was treating my body that way. Why was I eating all the time? Now, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and I have no doubt that that is where my self-soothing with food came from, right? So I figured out that I was going to have to go back working with a counselor for the first time. I'd never thought about going to see anybody, but I was really angry and upset about my brother's death because he was the last one. My mom and dad had passed, my older brother had passed, and now Eric was gone. And I went to counseling because I was angry. But what I found out was there was a lot of pain and emotional baggage that came from growing up in that environment. There was lots of love, but there was a lot of dysfunction. And when I was anxious, I would turn to food. So instead of dealing with my emotions in a healthy way, and which, when you're a kid, you don't have a ton of options of how you're going to navigate the world. But as I became an adult, certainly I had more options, but I was constantly just trying to deal with the weight, the number on the scale, and not what was causing that. And so I started working on why was I so anxious, because there was tons of anxiety around food. I remember growing up that if I were to go spend the night at a friend's house, I was terrified. There was never going to be enough food, that I couldn't eat when I wanted to eat. What if they ate at times that I didn't eat and I was hungry? I didn't, all of that caused me a lot of anxiety. And so as I finally figured out that my life now depended upon me figuring this out, because it did, I went to a therapist, started working with her, and I started working with a coach. And what I found out was, yes, I self-soothe with food. Why do I? Because I get anxious and I get a case of what my mom would call the dreads. I mean, and I have a tendency to kind of think that the worst is going to happen all the time, because frankly, a lot of that did happen. What's the worst that could happen? You could get cancer. Did that. What's the worst that could happen? Your family could die. They did that. What's the worst that could happen? So, I mean, I had all sorts of reasons to feel that way, but I had to realize that I had to figure out and become much more aware of why I was eating, why I was self-sabotaging, why I didn't respect myself enough to want to have a healthy, wonderful, robust life. And so a lot of that happened through therapy, because I think if we could do that on our own, we would have done that already, right? And so believe me, it has taken me a village. My husband has been supportive, my daughter's been supportive. I mean, everybody's been terrific, but ultimately I had to figure some of those things out. You should hear the arguments in my head when there are cookies or something. I'm like, oh my Lord, really? And so I had to figure out techniques on how to catch myself, and how to, and this was a big one, I had to learn how to quit letting myself down. I had to keep my commitments to myself and not relinquishing my power to all the external circumstances. And that is a lot of work. And in fact, I just finished the first draft of my book, and that's a lot of what I talk about is, well, on a day-to-day basis. How am I doing this? What works? What works for me? Well, I try to be as well prepared as possible. I always have healthy food in the house. I pack my lunch every night before work. I make sure that I have healthy snacks. Because I'm still obsessed with food. Still, I just am obsessed with healthier food. And so I do those types of things, and I keep building in, kind of these bumpers so that as I move through, if I can self-correct if I need to, because, the odds were stacked against me in the first place to even be successful. I was a 3-time cancer survivor. I was 57 at the time. I had no thyroid. I just had a radical hysterectomy, and I didn't move at all. I was very sedentary. I have a very sedentary job. So if anything was stacked against me, I was the poster child for that. And then I realized after I was able to achieve the weight loss, I thought, well, now you really are the poster child for gaining all the weight back. So you better put in some more mechanisms to protect your lifestyle. And so I do a lot of the same things and then some, because it is hard.
The inspiration is off the charts here. It seriously is. And I really want to hone in on one element because I know
Mhm.
even working with clients, that idea of you put mechanisms in place.
Yeah.
You were aware of what obstacles were going to come about and you were ahead of them. You had the healthy options in front of you. And for anyone who's looking to be healthier in any regard, nutrition, fitness, etc., that's huge. Make it easy or easier, prepare. So just to really say that again, for the listeners, because I know in my life, you just said in your life with so many clients and just each day reading more examples of that. But
Mhm.
your story, I mean, the immensity of all of it that you had to go through is incredible. I have to ask you, what's something that is most surprising about where you are at now in your life?
What surprise? Oh, that's such a great question, Kate. So I think what has surprised me the most is I've become aware of how little respect I had for myself up to this point. How much I was doing so much for so many people. I was helping other people achieve their life dreams. I would get inconvenienced. I didn't care. I was helping them, and I felt good about that. And we should feel good about that. But I never would ask anyone else to help me, to support me, because I felt like I wasn't worth that. I wasn't worthy to have this beautiful, amazing life that everybody else seemed to feel like they should have. I didn't know why I didn't feel like I deserved that. But I think what surprised me now is that, and it sounds very cliche, but there are so many more options available to me, not because I lost weight, though that doesn't hurt, right? Clothes shopping is more fun. People treat you differently. And then I realized, well, people treat you differently because you treat you differently.
Mm,
And I had to own that. But what has surprised me the most is how much of a big life there is to live. And I was living a very small life. So I think it's the bigness and the immensity of what is there for the taking. And that's been probably the most fun too.
I feel like that last 60 seconds could be the whole podcast episode in of itself too, like another separate one, because there's so much in just those few sentences. So thank you for sharing and sharing this whole story. And something I've been asking all my guests lately is if someone came to you and said, I see what you're doing, I see the changes you make, I see the positive difference you're making in other people's lives too, as well as your own. Do you have any advice for how I can do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One, and because people do ask me, and I'm like, okay, well, be honest with yourself. Denial and justification got us into this mess. It's not going to get us out of it. So let's be honest, right? Secondly, talk to somebody. Find somebody to help sort through all of the things that are holding you back, because we don't know what's holding us back other than it's us. It's always us. Everything we do is a mental exercise, right? If even if you're doing some big physical thing, it's more mental than it is physical. And losing weight is more mental than physical. And so I tell people to be honest, start finding somebody to talk to so that you can unpack all of your baggage and find out what's getting in your way. And secondly, and for me, this is the most important thing I've learned all along, it is the tiniest, the smallest of behaviors, of things you need to do differently that add up to huge change. Not the big grandiose Monday morning, I'm going to eat 1,000 calories. I'm going to work out twice a day. I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes. I'm going whatever, right? And after day 2, we're not doing any of that because it's too much. It's too big and it's not sustainable. So I tell people, look, even though you feel like you are not making any progress at all, just packing your lunch every day so that you have a healthy meal to eat at lunch instead of fast food, instead of wherever you go, over time, you will see a significant change. It's just like if you go to the gym and you work out once, or you go and you work out for a week, and then you're like, well, I don't feel any different. I'm not stronger. My legs aren't stronger. I haven't lost my stomach. I mean, I don't think it's working, right? Well, no, of course it is. You just can't see it yet. And it's just like if you eat one donut, though who can eat just one donut? I don't know. But if you eat one donut, is it going to make a difference? No, not really. But if you eat one donut every day, pretty soon it shows up. So it works negatively and it works positively. So if I can help anyone change their mindset from big, grandiose things to very small, doable, sustainable, yeah, I can do that, because it is whatever you can do is what you should be doing, right? And so that's really important. And for me, it took a lot of pressure off. And then the last thing I did was I started to work on my relationship with food, because I figured if I did that, the scale would follow. And it did.
Great. And just to add on to that idea of not doing all of it at once, right? I talked about this a couple times before on the podcast. I love James Clear.
Yes,
His
yes,
things.
Atomic Habits. I'm a
Yeah,
huge fan. Yeah.
exactly. And, for those who don't know him, he talks a lot about that idea of be the kind of person who goes to the gym or eats healthy, and you tell yourself, I am that kind of person, right? If you say, oh, I am not a morning person, it's like, well, you're not going to be then. But if you start just saying, I'm a morning person, and try to get up 5 minutes earlier, don't try to get up an hour earlier, don't go to the gym for an hour, go ahead, go for 5 minutes and then leave.
Yeah.
And just keep going for 5 minutes and leaving until eventually you start to go a little longer. But it's the consistency and the doing it small amounts make the huge difference, which is that's exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. I read his book. I found his book about halfway through my weight loss time period. And it really reinforced what I was already doing. But B, he helped me take it even farther, right? He does a great job of explaining the how to do that so that it's sustainable and that you are able to keep going, right? Because we all know you got to do it day in and day out and no excuses. Somebody said to me on my podcast, he said, you've got to be committed 100%, because if you're only 99%, you're not going to do it. And I have found that to be true, right? You gave yourself an out. You gave yourself an out.
Absolutely. Gretchen, I've been closing out all the episodes this season by asking the question, why do you think it is important that we're sharing these good, positive news stories?
Oh, because there's so much bad news out there. There's so much negativity. And I get sucked into it too. I'm like everybody else. I want to hide under a blanket sometimes and wait for the world to get better. And then of course you realize, well, then if you want that to happen, you better do something about it. And we all learn from each other's stories. That's how we get inspiration. That's how I got inspiration. That's how I get inspiration. When I talk to my guests, I'm inspired and I learn new things and I take little pieces that I can apply to my own life and it makes my life better. And then I take those things and talk to other people and I hope it makes their lives better. But the only way to do that is to highlight all this positivity and stick to itiveness and help people realize that they can do all of these things. They can. And we have to quit relinquishing our power to other people who are getting in our way. And so I think when we share stories like you share on your podcast, what I hope people are getting from it is, yeah, oh man, I don't have to do that, but I can do whatever special thing I can do and maybe give ourselves permission or shine a light or something. So it is so important, especially now. We've come off such a terribly, terribly difficult time. And I just think bringing together people collectively will make it so much more powerful. So that's really what I love about what you're doing and what I do. I just think there's enough negativity. Let's highlight the good stuff.
And where can people find the work in between and you online?
So my website is GretchenHolmesPhD.com. So you can go there and there's all sorts of stuff there. The work in between is on wherever you get your podcast. So this season is about to start in about another probably mid-February. And we're going to be on YouTube as well. But of course, Spotify and Apple and Podbean and all those places. So I'm working on the second edit of my book. I can't wait, and hopefully that'll be out soon. I'm hoping by summer. That would be awesome. But
I can't wait.
it's exciting. I mean, it really is. Though I just got to tell you, going back through and writing all this stuff, I thought, holy smokes, that's ridiculous. But it's hopefully it'll be helpful. It was for me to write it, and I'm excited to see what 2024 is going to bring.
Well, like you said, we learned from each other's stories. So thank you for sharing yours. So appreciated having you here today, Gretchen, and great to connect.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited that I got to talk with you.
In taking classes over the years or observing workout videos, one major piece that is often missing: stressing safety and form. Additionally, group fitness classes are often marketed as being open to all levels, yet how often do instructors not give modifications nor progressions so that each participant truly can get what he or she needs out of the class? So that's why I created the 101 series, which take things back to basics with 3 separate courses: Bar 101, Pilates 101, and HIIT 101, focusing on safety and efficiency so you can maximize your workouts. Be confident when you step into a group fitness class or workout on your own. Be strong in your execution of the most common exercises, and be proud of yourself for taking these huge steps forward on your health journey. Check it out at BeByKate.com. The link is in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to Be the Good with Kate Chericello. Whether you're listening on YouTube or via podcast, it would mean the world if you liked, subscribed, and or left a review. You heard about the good? Now go out and be the good in your life this week. If you have stories of good news that need to be shared, please send me a message. Thanks again, and have a great week.